Picture a quiet winter night in rural Ukraine, December 1995. Snow blankets the countryside. Families gather inside their warm homes, celebrating Christmas. Children sleep peacefully in their beds. Everything seems normal. Then, in the darkness, a figure approaches an isolated farmhouse. Within minutes, an entire family is gone. Parents, children, everyone. The house burns to the ground, and the figure disappears into the night, leaving no witnesses behind. Between December 1995 and March 1996, terror swept across Ukraine. Entire families were being wiped out in their homes. No one was spared. Not the fathers, not the mothers, not even the children. The pattern was always the same. Isolated houses in rural areas, late-night attacks. Everyone inside was eliminated. Buildings set on fire. And anyone who happened to be nearby at the wrong time also lost their lives. Ukrainian police had never seen anything like it. The brutality was beyond comprehension. The speed was terrifying. In just 6 months, this person would end the lives of 43 people. But here is what makes this case even more disturbing. This was not the beginning. It was the end of a 7-year spree that had already claimed dozens of victims. His name was Anatoly Onoprienko. The media would give him many names: the Beast of Ukraine, the Terminator, Citizen O. Between 1989 and 1996, he confessed to taking the lives of 52 people across Ukraine. Entire families eliminated in single attacks. Witnesses removed without hesitation. Bodies burned beyond recognition. His method was ruthless and efficient. He would choose isolated homes far from help. He would break in during the darkest hours. He would use firearms to eliminate every person inside within minutes. Then he would set everything ablaze to destroy evidence. In early 1996, panic spread across Ukraine. Small villages became ghost towns after dark. Families moved to cities for safety. People armed themselves and stopped sleeping. Parents kept their children close. No one felt safe. The Ukrainian government launched the largest manhunt in the nation's history. 2,000 police officers, more than 3,000 soldiers. Entire regions searched house by house, roadblocks on every highway, helicopters scanning remote areas. But Anatoly Onoprienko continued his attacks. He moved between regions like a ghost. He struck without warning. He left no survivors to describe him. He vanished before authorities could respond. This is not just another true crime story. This is the account of one of Eastern Europe's most brutal criminals. A man who operated during Ukraine's transition from Soviet rule to independence. A time of chaos and confusion. A time when systems were breaking down and predators could operate freely. This is the complete story of Anatoly Onoprienko. From his abandonment as a child to his first attack in 1989. From the 6-month terror campaign that finally exposed him to the massive manhunt that brought him down. From his trial in an iron cage to his death in prison in 2013. Stay with us as we explore every detail of this case. Because understanding how this happened is the only way to prevent it from happening again. Anatoly Yuryovich Onoprienko was born on July 25, 1959, in the village of Lasky in Zhytomyr Oblast, Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. He was the younger of 2 sons. His older brother, Valentin, was 13 years older than him. His father, Yuri Onoprienko, was a decorated war hero. He had served on the Eastern Front during World War II and earned medals for bravery. He was a respected man in his community, but tragedy would soon strike the family. When Anatoly was 4 years old, his mother died. The cause is not clearly documented in official records, but her death left 2 young boys without maternal care. For a time, Anatoly was cared for by his grandparents and aunt. The extended family tried to keep the boys together. They wanted to give young Anatoly stability and love during this difficult time. But it was not meant to last. His father made a decision that would shape Anatoly's entire life. Yuri Onoprienko kept the older son, Valentin, at home with him. But he sent young Anatoly to an orphanage in the village of Privitne in Volyn Oblast. Anatoly was still very young when this happened. He did not understand why his father kept his brother but sent him away. He did not understand what he had done wrong. He only knew that his father chose his brother over him. This abandonment created a wound that would never heal. Life in Soviet orphanages during the 1960s was harsh. Children received basic care but little affection. They wore uniforms and followed strict schedules. They had few possessions and limited contact with the outside world. Anatoly grew up knowing that somewhere out there, his father and brother lived together as a family. While he slept in a dormitory with dozens of other abandoned children, his brother slept in his own bed at home. While he ate institutional food, his brother ate home-cooked meals. While he had no one, his brother had everything. The resentment grew year by year. Years later, during interviews after his arrest, Onoprienko would say that this abandonment predetermined his destiny. He claimed that 70% of children raised in orphanages end up in prison as adults. Whether this statistic was accurate or just his justification, the message was clear. He blamed his father for what he became. Onoprienko later claimed that he started hearing voices when he was 7 years old, right around the time he entered the orphanage. These voices, he said, would speak to him throughout his life. They would eventually command him to commit terrible acts. Whether these voices were real symptoms of mental illness or convenient excuses created later, we may never know. But what we do know is that young Anatoly Onoprienko was developing into someone very different from other children. As a young man in his early 20s, Onoprienko went hunting in the woods. He encountered a deer. He took aim and ended the animal's life. He later said this was the first living thing he ever harmed, and he claimed he felt sorry about it. He said he had no real reason to do it, and felt genuine regret afterward. But that would be the first and last time Anatoly Onoprienko felt remorse for taking a life. Something changed after that moment in the woods. Whatever capacity for empathy existed inside him disappeared. From that point forward, he would feel nothing. As an adult, Onoprienko drifted through life without clear direction. He worked as a sailor for a time. He studied forestry at university but never completed his degree. He moved from job to job, never settling anywhere for long. People who knew him during this period described him as unremarkable. He was quiet, kept to himself, and seemed like just another person struggling to find his place in a changing Ukraine. But beneath the surface, something dark was growing. Onoprienko was known to authorities for reasons that remain unclear in official records. He was on an outpatient program at a local psychiatric hospital. He had been treated for mental health issues, though the specific diagnosis is disputed. Some sources say schizophrenia. Others are less specific. What is clear is that by 1989, Anatoly Onoprienko was ready to act on whatever darkness lived inside him. Anatoly Onoprienko's criminal activity began not with violence, but with theft. He met a man named Sergei Rogozin at a gym where they both worked out. the two men began breaking into isolated houses at night to steal valuables. Their method was simple. They would identify homes far from neighbors in rural areas. They would break in while families slept. They would take whatever they could carry and disappear before dawn. For a while, this worked. They committed several burglaries without incident. But then, something went wrong. In 1989, Onoprienko and Rogozin broke into a home in Bratkovici. Their goal was robbery, nothing more. But the family woke up. They discovered the intruders. What happened next shocked even Rogozin. Onoprienko did not run. He did not try to escape. Instead, he eliminated the threat. The family consisted of 2 adults and 8 children, 10 people total. All of them were ended that night. Onoprienko later claimed they acted in self-defense. He said the family threatened them, and they had no choice. But the brutality of what happened suggests something more than self-defense. After that night, Sergei Rogozin wanted nothing more to do with Anatoly Onoprienko. He severed all ties with him. He recognized that his partner had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But for Onoprienko, something had awakened. He had discovered that he could take human life without feeling anything. No guilt, no fear, no remorse, just emptiness. Later that same year, Onoprienko encountered 5 people sleeping in a car. An 11-year-old boy and 4 adults. He originally planned only to steal from the vehicle, but he decided to eliminate all witnesses. He ended their lives while they slept. Then he set the car on fire to destroy evidence. He later claimed he had not planned to harm anyone. He said it just happened. But this pattern of eliminating witnesses would become his signature. After 1989, Onoprienko seemed to stop for a while, or perhaps he simply became more careful. There are significant gaps in the timeline of his movements between 1989 and 1995. What we know for certain is that he was expelled from both Austria and Germany during this period. The reasons for these expulsions remain unclear. Some investigators believe he may have committed crimes in those countries that were never connected to him. He also traveled extensively around Ukraine. He had no fixed address, no steady employment, no clear source of income. He moved from place to place like a ghost, never staying anywhere long enough to be noticed. During this time, he may have committed other crimes that were never solved. Investigators would later try to connect him to unsolved cases across Ukraine and neighboring countries. But without concrete evidence, these connections remain speculation. What is certain is that by late 1995, Anatoly Onoprienko was ready to begin again. And this time, he would be impossible to ignore. On Christmas Eve 1995, Anatoly Onoprienko walked to an isolated home in Garmarnia, a village in central Ukraine. Inside lived the Zaichenko family, 2 adults and 2 children. He broke into their home during the night. He used a sawed-off Taz 34 double-barreled shotgun to eliminate all 4 family members. Then he robbed the house, taking whatever valuables he could find. Before leaving, he set the building on fire. The flames consumed everything, destroying evidence and turning the home into a crematorium. This attack established the pattern that would define the next 3 months of terror. Just days into the new year, Onoprienko struck again. On January 2nd, 1996, he targeted another family of 4. The pattern was identical. Break in at night, eliminate everyone, rob the home, set it on fire. But this time, a male pedestrian happened to walk past the property at the wrong moment. Onoprienko ended his life too. No witnesses could be left alive. 4 days later, Onoprienko changed his method. Instead of targeting homes, he began stopping cars on the Berdyansk-Dniprovsk highway. His victims that day included Kasai, a Ukrainian Navy ensign, Savitsky, a taxi driver, Kokurgina, a cook at a local farm, and one unidentified person whose name was never recorded. He approached each vehicle with his weapon. He eliminated the driver. He took whatever valuables they had. Then he moved on to the next target. 4 people gone in a single day. All random, all strangers, all unnecessary. 11 days later, Onoprienko attacked the pilot family in Bratkovichi. This family consisted of 2 adults and 3 children, 5 people sleeping peacefully in their beds. He broke in during the early morning hours. He eliminated all 5 family members using a shotgun. Then he searched the house for valuables. Before he could leave, a 27-year-old railroad worker named Konzala walked past the property on her way to work. She had chosen that morning, that road, that moment by pure chance. Onoprienko ended her life to eliminate the witness. Minutes later, a 56-year-old pedestrian named Zakharko walked down the same road. Wrong place, wrong time. Onoprienko eliminated him too. 7 people gone, 5 were targets, 2 were just unlucky. After finishing, Onoprienko set the house on fire and disappeared into the darkness. Less than 2 weeks later, in the Fastiv region of Kyiv Oblast, Onoprienko targeted a woman named Marusina, age 28. She lived with her 2 young sons and had a visitor that night, a 32-year-old man named Zagranichny. All 4 were eliminated. The house was robbed and then burned. 4 more lives erased in minutes. In Olevsk, Zhytomyr Oblast, the Dubchak family became Onoprienko's next target. 2 adults and 2 children. He broke into their home. He eliminated the father first, then the son. According to his later confession, he struck the mother repeatedly with a hammer until she was gone. When the daughter refused to tell him where money was hidden, he eliminated her too. 4 more victims. 4 more families destroyed. Just 8 days later, Onoprienko attacked the Bodnarchuk family in Malin, Lviv Oblast. This family had 2 young daughters, aged 7 and 8. He eliminated the parents with his shotgun. Then, he used an axe to end the lives of the 2 little girls. But he was not finished. About an hour later, a neighboring businessman named Salk wandered onto the Bodnarchuk property. Perhaps he heard the commotion. Perhaps he saw the smoke or flames. Whatever brought him there, it cost him his life. Onoprienko eliminated him with the shotgun, then used the axe on his body as well. 5 people gone in one night. The Novosad family of 4 became Anatoly Onoprienko's last victims. They lived in Busk, outside Bratkovichi, 2 adults and 2 children. The attack followed the same pattern. Break in at night. Eliminate everyone. Rob the house. Set it on fire. By the time firefighters and police arrived, the family was gone and the evidence was burning. This would be Onoprienko's 52nd and final victim. But no one knew it at the time. For all anyone knew, the attacks would continue forever. By early 1996, fear had gripped Ukraine. News reports described the attacks in terrifying detail. Entire families wiped out, no survivors, no clear motive, no pattern except isolation. Small villages became deserted after sunset. People who lived in rural areas moved to cities. Those who stayed armed themselves and barricaded their homes. Parents stopped letting children out of their sight. The media gave the unknown attacker various names: the Terminator, Citizen O, the Beast of Ukraine. Each name reflected the cold, mechanical efficiency of the attacks. The Ukrainian government had never mounted an operation like this before. The scale was unprecedented. 2,000 police officers were assigned to the case. More than 3,000 soldiers joined the search. Helicopters flew over remote areas. Roadblocks appeared on every major highway. Police searched house by house in the regions where attacks had occurred. The government offered rewards for information. Citizens were encouraged to report any suspicious activity. Tip lines received thousands of calls, but none led anywhere. The problem was simple. No one had seen the attacker. He struck at night. He left no witnesses. He moved between regions before police could respond. He was a ghost. In March 1996, authorities were desperate. The pressure to solve the case was enormous. The public demanded action. Politicians needed results. Then police received information about a man named Yuri Mozola. He was 26 years old and lived in one of the affected regions. Someone had reported suspicious behavior. On very thin evidence, the Security Service of Ukraine and the Public Prosecutor's Office detained Mozola as a suspect. For 3 days, 6 SBU members and 1 prosecutor's representative interrogated him. But interrogation is not the right word. They subjected him to terrible treatment. They burned him. They shocked him with electricity. They beat him. Yuri Mozola insisted he was innocent. He refused to confess because he had nothing to confess to. He had committed no crimes. On the 3rd day, Yuri Mozola died from the mistreatment. Eventually, 7 people responsible for his death would be sentenced to prison terms. But that provided no comfort to Mozola's family. An innocent man had been taken and had lost his life because authorities were desperate to solve an unsolvable case. 17 days after Yuri Mozola's death, investigators finally caught a break. Anatoly Onoprienko had been staying with a relative in a village near the Polish border. He kept a stash of weapons and stolen items hidden in the house. The relative discovered the hidden items. When they realized what they might be looking at, they grew suspicious. They confronted Onoprienko and forced him to leave. Then they contacted the police. When police received the information about Onoprienko's weapons cache, they began investigating him immediately. They discovered that he had been traveling throughout Ukraine during the period of the attacks. He had no fixed address, no steady income, no reasonable explanation for his movements. A task force was assembled. More than 20 detectives and patrolmen were assigned to apprehend him. On April 16, 1996, they located him at his girlfriend's apartment in Yavoriv, Lviv Oblast, near the Polish border. They moved in carefully. This man had eliminated 52 people. He was heavily armed and extremely dangerous. One wrong move could result in a shootout that would cost more lives. But the arrest went smoothly. When they broke down the door, they found Anatoly Onoprienko unarmed and unprepared. He did not resist. He did not fight back. The Terminator was captured without firing a single shot. When police searched Onoprienko's possessions, they found an arsenal. He had the sawed-off TOS 34 shotgun used in multiple attacks. He had other firearms that matched ballistics evidence from various crime scenes. He had more than 120 items stolen from victims. The evidence was overwhelming. This was their man. After his arrest, Onoprienko was transferred to Lviv for questioning. The lead investigator was a man named Teslia, who would later describe Onoprienko as the most perplexing person he had ever interviewed. At first, Onoprienko confessed to only 8 crimes committed between 1989 and 1995. He denied involvement in the 1996 attacks. He maintained that he was innocent of the worst charges. But Teslia was patient. He conducted 5 days of one-on-one interviews with Onoprienko. He built rapport. He listened. He did not judge or pressure. Slowly, Onoprienko began to open up. During these interviews, Onoprienko made some extraordinary claims. He said he was commanded by higher powers to commit his crimes. He claimed he had been chosen as a superior specimen. He insisted he possessed strong hypnotic powers. He said he could control animals through telepathy and could stop his heart with his mind. When Teslia asked him to demonstrate these hypnotic powers, Onoprienko responded that they only worked on weak people, and Teslia was not weak enough. These claims raised questions about his mental state. Was he genuinely experiencing delusions? Or was he crafting an insanity defense? Eventually, Anatoly Onoprienko confessed to all 52 crimes. He provided details that only the true perpetrator would know. He described the layout of homes. He explained his methods. He admitted to targeting entire families to eliminate witnesses. He showed no emotion during these confessions. No tears, no remorse, no shame. He spoke about taking human lives the way someone might describe their daily routine. When asked how he felt about his victims, he gave his now famous response. "To me, taking lives is like ripping open a pillow. I have never felt sorry for those I harmed. No love, no hatred, just blind indifference. I don't see them as individuals, but just as masses." This statement would define how the world viewed Anatoly Onoprienko, not as a human being, not even as a monster, but as something else entirely. A machine, a robot, something without conscience or soul. Anatoly Onoprienko was arrested in April 1996. His trial did not begin until November 1998. More than 2.5 years passed between arrest and trial. Ukrainian law at the time required that defendants be allowed to review all evidence against them before trial. In Onoprienko's case, this meant 99 volumes of documentation, crime scene photographs, forensic reports, witness statements, ballistics analysis, autopsy results. The law gave him the right to read all of it at his own pace. Additionally, the government needed to allocate special funds for such a lengthy and complex trial. More than 400 witnesses needed to be transported and accommodated. The logistical challenges were enormous. The head judge in the case made a televised appeal to the Ukrainian government, requesting the necessary funding. Eventually, the money was provided. The trial took place in Zhytomyr Oblast Court. Judge Dmytro Lipsky presided. Prosecutor Yuri Ignatenko presented the case against Onoprienko. When Onoprienko entered the courtroom, he was confined in an iron cage. This was standard procedure for extremely dangerous defendants in Ukraine. The cage ensured he could not escape or attack anyone. The courtroom was packed. Hundreds of spectators had come to see the man who terrorized their nation. Many were family members of victims. Others were simply citizens who wanted to witness justice. The crowd was angry. People spat at the cage. They shouted insults. They called for his death. They demanded he suffer. Police had to maintain order to prevent riots. Through it all, Anatoly Onoprienko remained mostly silent. When Judge Lipsky asked if he wanted to make a statement, he simply shrugged and said quietly, "No, nothing." Onoprienko's defense team argued that he was not mentally competent to stand trial. They claimed he suffered from serious psychiatric conditions that prevented him from understanding his actions or controlling his behavior. He had, after all, been treated at a psychiatric hospital in Kiev. He claimed to hear voices. He believed he had supernatural powers. These were signs of mental illness, the defense argued. But prosecutor Ignatenko countered that Onoprienko had already been evaluated by multiple psychiatrists. All had determined he was competent to stand trial. He understood right from wrong. He planned his attacks carefully. He took deliberate steps to avoid capture and destroy evidence. These were not the actions of someone who lacked understanding or control. These were the calculated decisions of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The judge agreed. The trial proceeded. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Ballistics matched Onoprienko's weapons to multiple crime scenes. Items stolen from victims were found in his possession. His travel patterns matched the locations and timing of the attacks perfectly. More than 400 witnesses testified. Family members of victims, police officers, forensic experts. Each one added another piece to the puzzle. Onoprienko himself confessed to all 52 crimes in open court. He admitted his guilt without hesitation. There was no doubt, no possibility of mistake. Anatoly Onoprienko had committed these terrible acts. Sergei Rogozin, age 36, appeared in court as a co-defendant. He was accused of being Onoprienko's accomplice in the first 9 crimes committed in 1989. Rogozin proclaimed his innocence. He admitted to participating in burglaries with Onoprienko, but claimed he had no knowledge of any violence. He said he severed ties with Onoprienko immediately after the Bratkovici incident because he was horrified by what happened. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to 13 years in prison for his role in the 1989 crimes. After 4 months of trial, the jury deliberated for 3 hours. Then they returned with their verdict: guilty on all 52 counts. Anatoly Onoprienko showed no reaction, no surprise, no fear, nothing. Judge Lipsky delivered the sentence. According to Ukrainian criminal code, Onoprienko was sentenced to death by firing squad. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, others wept with relief. Family members of victims felt, perhaps for the first time in years, that justice had been served. But the story was not over. In 1995, Ukraine had joined the Council of Europe. As a condition of membership, the country agreed to abolish capital punishment. A moratorium on executions was put in place. Politicians and citizens argued that Anatoly Onoprienko should be an exception. Someone who eliminated 52 people, including children, deserved the ultimate penalty. The public demanded his execution. But the law was clear. Ukraine had committed to ending the practice of capital punishment. No exceptions would be made. In August 1999, Anatoly Onoprienko's death sentence was officially commuted to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. He would spend the rest of his days in prison. Anatoly Onoprienko was transferred to a maximum security prison in Zhytomyr, Ukraine. He would spend 17 years there, isolated from the general prison population. He was kept separate because prison authorities knew what would happen if he mixed with other inmates. Even among criminals, those who harm children and families are despised. Onoprienko would not have survived a single day in general population. So he lived alone. He ate alone. He exercised alone. Day after day, year after year, in complete isolation. As years passed, Onoprienko's health began to fail. He developed various medical conditions. His body weakened. He spent more time in the prison medical facility. By 2013, he was 54 years old and seriously ill. His heart was failing. He had multiple health complications. The years of isolation and imprisonment had taken their physical toll. On August 27, 2013, Anatoly Onoprienko suffered a heart attack in Zhytomyr prison. Medical staff tried to help him, but his body had deteriorated too much. His heart gave out. At the age of 54, the Beast of Ukraine died. News of his death spread quickly throughout Ukraine. For many, it brought relief. The monster was finally gone. He could never hurt anyone again. For the families of his victims, the feelings were more complicated. Some felt satisfaction that he had died behind bars. Others felt angry that he had been allowed to live as long as he did. Some simply felt tired of carrying the weight of what he had done to their loved ones. Onoprienko's case demonstrates how childhood trauma can shape entire lives. Abandonment, neglect, and institutional care without love can create deep psychological damage. This does not excuse his crimes. Millions overcome difficult childhoods without hurting anyone. But it reminds us that we have a responsibility to care for vulnerable children. Every child deserves stability, love, and a sense of belonging. Orphanages and foster systems must provide more than basic care. They must provide emotional support and psychological help. When we fail children, we sometimes create the very threats we fear. Onoprienko exhibited clear signs of mental illness throughout his life. He heard voices. He had delusions of power. He was treated at psychiatric facilities. Yet he fell through the cracks. He did not receive consistent care or monitoring. Eventually, he stopped treatment altogether. Better mental health systems could have prevented some or all of his crimes. Regular monitoring, mandatory treatment, crisis intervention. These tools exist but must be properly funded and implemented. Mental illness alone does not create criminals, but untreated severe mental illness combined with other risk factors can be catastrophic. Onoprienko operated during Ukraine's most chaotic period. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. Economic systems were failing. Government institutions were weak. Law enforcement was overwhelmed. In stable societies with strong institutions, someone like Onoprienko gets caught quickly. Systems work together. Information is shared. Resources are available. But in chaos, predators thrive. They exploit the confusion. They operate in the gaps between failing systems. This lesson applies everywhere. Strong institutions protect people. Weak institutions enable harm. Onoprienko crossed borders. He was expelled from multiple countries. He may have committed crimes outside Ukraine that were never connected to him. Better international cooperation could have stopped him sooner. Shared databases, coordinated investigations, information exchange between countries. In our connected world, criminals do not respect borders. Our response must not respect them either. Onoprienko's relative discovered his weapons cache and reported it. That single action ended his crime spree. If something seems wrong, report it. If someone's behavior raises concerns, speak up. If you notice patterns that trouble you, contact authorities. Most reports will turn out to be nothing, but some will save lives. The slight awkwardness of making an unnecessary report is nothing compared to the tragedy of staying silent when action could prevent harm. Anatoly Onoprienko walked the streets of Ukraine for 7 years. He interacted with thousands of people. He rode buses. He stayed in homes. He shopped in stores. And no one knew. This is the terrifying truth. Dangerous people often look normal. They blend in. They seem unremarkable. They do not announce their intentions. The person sitting next to you on the bus might be hiding darkness. The quiet neighbor might harbor terrible secrets. We can never know for certain. This is not meant to create paranoia. Most people are good. Most neighbors are safe. But it means we must remain aware. We must watch for warning signs. We must trust our instincts when something feels wrong. This story reminds us that monsters can hide behind ordinary faces, and broken systems allow tragedy to flourish. We must protect vulnerable children, strengthen mental health care, and trust our instincts when something feels wrong. Share this video to spread awareness, and join our channel to be part of this journey toward a safer world.